Welcome to Connections and Conversations, an advocacy arena podcast, working to increase civic engagement and strengthen our communities. I'm so happy to be here today with my friend JTK, who has been a long-time grassroots advocate, and I wanted to talk to him today about some of his work that he has done and some things that he's planning to do. So welcome, JTK. How are you?
I'm well, thanks, Dee. How are you?
I'm great. I wanted to talk to you so that people could kind of understand. Tell us a little bit about, you're located in Minnesota.
Yes.
And that's where, you have done your political training and work. Mm-hmm. Tell us how you got started in politics and being civically engaged.
My entire life, I've grown up watching the news. My mom was a federal government employee. So was her sister and my uncle. So pretty much anytime something happened with the federal government, they were always talking about it. So I just kind of grew up always understanding what the government does influences us, particularly my family, because it influenced my mom's work. So that's where really being civically minded and understanding what's going on came from. Also, my mom always encouraged me to read the newspaper. She was always putting the newspaper in my hand, and I was always reading what was going on in the world and watching the news. So a lot of it really comes from who my mom was. And really comes from both just the experience of her working for the government. So just knowing there is a government and knowing how much that impacts what's going on in our home, what's going on in our community. And then also to just really my mom really strongly believing in her kids should know what's going on in the world around them and should read and be involved.
She did good, and good for her. And you were a good student, a good son.
Thank you.
So when you got involved in the local politics, what did you do? I've heard you tell the story a little bit, like the first campaign that you got pulled into actually working on a campaign and what that was like.
Yeah, so I would have to say the election of 2000 is really when I started paying attention to actual elections. So more than just what happens in the government, but how people get into the government in the first place to make decisions. We all know what happened in that election. So middle school and in high school, just became really interested in elections and how campaigns work. So really, I started just simply by signing up to volunteer for the Democratic Party. And, just randomly one day, I got a phone call from an organizer with the Democratic Party in Minnesota. And in Minnesota, we call it the DFL, or the Democratic Farmer Labor Party. So in the 40s, the Minnesota Democratic Party and the Farmer Labor Party actually merged to form the DFL. So that's why the party is called the Democratic Farmer Labor Party in Minnesota. So I got a call. They were looking for people to volunteer at the state fair. So the party was just collecting petitions for people wanting, at the time, the governor to turn over his tax information. So he was being a little shady with his tax information, which, is a common tactic anytime there's, oh my goodness, somebody forgot 3 cents on one of their tax forms or something someplace, investigate, ask questions, what's going on. It's just kind of a common thing. And petitions are a really good method for parties to collect information. Back then, this was obviously a paper petition, but it's really hard to log in to the internet and, visit a website without being asked to sign some petition. Sign the petition to restore Roe. Sign the petition to stop the war. Sign the petition to do this or to do that. It's really political entities collecting information. So they want to know somebody who is really upset by something and assign their name to a petition. They were looking for people to volunteer at the state fair booth in order to do that. So I did, which somewhat to the shock of my mother, being a very reserved child who wasn't exactly super thrilled with talking to people. I was always the kid who would take weeks before he would say hi to the teacher in classroom and in school. Was a little, I don't know about this, but okay. You really want to.
That's funny.
Yeah, and I had a blast. They gave me a clipboard, and everybody who came into the booth, I was like, okay, we're collecting petitions. Tim Pawlenty is being shady. We need his tax information. He's hiding it. Sign this petition to get him to release his tax information. And it truly was a
So
blast.
you were bitten.
Yep, exactly. So that was really kind of my first experience in terms of just any type of involvement with a political party or with actually getting involved in the process when it comes to who actually gets to be in the government.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that was the start of a very long process for me for advocacy and for, wanting to be involved in things. And then it just kind of progressed from there. So that was, I think, 2003 or so. And then we had the 2004 election, which, at first I didn't quite. It took a little bit of being involved in the party first, I think, to really understand that American politics is not European style. This is what the party stands for. Everybody in the party votes en bloc for this. This is what this party stands for. Everybody votes en bloc for this. It's really that you have different flavors of Democrat. You have people who are, we do, we have people who are Democrats because their parents were. We have people who are Democrats because they believe in X versus these people believe in Y versus these people believe in Z. And, kind of understanding that the party really is a coalition. In European countries where you have 6 or 7 parties and they usually form 2 or 3 coalitions once they're elected. In the US, the coalition is really formed before the election. So this is kind of our slate of candidates.
Right.
It took me a while really to kind of understand that process. So, 2003, 2004, kind of 2005 or so, I really started learning about that process, learning people have differing views and understanding, I don't really know why somebody over here thinks that the Iraq War was a good idea. I thought that was a really bad idea. And I was in high school and I knew there weren't weapons of mass destruction.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, that's interesting. And I'm glad that you mentioned that because I know that another area that you have gone to work in, you went to school, you're into science and health and that sort of thing. And I know that you're going back to school. But one of the jobs that you had is also kind of an area that has been very politicized, women's health care. Could you talk a little bit about your background, where you work, and how it's been targeted?
Of course.
Okay.
So I left the political world working in politics so the last campaign that I participated in was in 2012. So in 2011, I took a job at an independent clinic in St. Paul called Family Tree Clinic. It was an independent reproductive health care provider. We did pretty much everything in reproductive health except provide abortion. I worked there until 2017, and then I actually took a job with Planned Parenthood. I've always believed in reproductive freedom and in reproductive rights, and one of the things that really drew me to that work, again, I really go back to my mother. My mother, as I mentioned before, was a federal government employee. My mom was a nurse. So she worked for the VA hospital in Minneapolis. And something that she always taught me growing up was to respect the human body. And, my sister and I were never allowed to use slang terms for body parts. My mom taught us about sex education. My mom taught us about relationships. My mom also was very open and understanding parent about a lot of things around that. And so it doesn't make sense to me why the government wants to insert itself into our doctor's offices and why we would regulate what somebody does with their own body. And more importantly, even beyond just simply reproductive health, stuff that, my mom has particularly because she knew my sister and I would be the ones making decisions for her when she got older, is, my mom always talked about the fact what you need to do to care for somebody. And one of the things is, even when we take the conversation solely out of bodily autonomy, like when we talk about reproductive health, because you're exactly right, it's so targeted right now.
Right.
There's no way to write into a law what is a medically necessary abortion versus what is not a medically necessary abortion. When we want to talk about the most controversial part of the work at Planned Parenthood is it is providing abortion services. That's a decision for a doctor and a patient to make, is when somebody is too ill. And it's, we really would not consider writing a law saying if somebody is this far gone, they're only eligible for hospice, versus if somebody is only this far gone, they have to continue treatment. That's a decision that you would make with your doctor. And that's a decision that you would make going through what the patient would want. You know, what is the likelihood of a meaningful recovery?
Right.
What health impacts would they have? Like, these are all decisions that families should be making and people should be making for themselves with their doctor, not with their government. And that's not something that you can quantify into a law to say that if conditions X, Y, and Z are met, it's treatment A. But if conditions A, B, and C are met, it's treatment B, and so on and so forth.
It's a shame that they have politicized a healthcare procedure, essentially.
Absolutely.
And because it has been so politicized over time, of course, now, they got to the point where we can no longer get it in certain states within certain time frames or whatever. But it's been politicized for a long time. And because of that, I know you have shared with us about the actual targeting of the place that you work because it has been politicized. Tell me a little bit about that.
Oh, yeah. So a lot of this happened before. So the state of Minnesota, we're really lucky. The government of Minnesota has been really affirming of the work that we do for a very long time. But even as such, I always kind of like to, describe it to people is we live in a pretty interesting neighborhood. So in addition to just people opposed to the work that we do in Minnesota, we also are very close to Wisconsin. We're also very close to Illinois. That as other states have restricted and basically eliminated access to safe legal abortion in their states, a lot of extremists have actually targeted us and come into Minnesota on top of what we were already facing. But for instance, the clinic that I worked in, so I left the organization last summer, but the building that I worked in, the building that it replaced, so where I work is in the Midway neighborhood in St. Paul, or where I worked was in the Midway neighborhood in St. Paul. But where we were located prior, so where the abortion services was located prior, was in the Highland Park neighborhood. So it's one neighborhood over. That building had actually been firebombed twice in the 1970s by anti-abortion extremists. So when you enter the building, there is security. So anybody who, brings a bag into the building, the bag is searched. Not employees. So when I would walk in with my work bag, they would know who I was, and would have, I was a very memorable employee. They probably remember who I was. We don't need to get into all the reasons why, but they're mostly good. They were mostly good. I'll just say that. But
okay.
But in general, we also have security cameras around the building. There are other security procedures I'm sure they probably would not like me to talk about. But one of the things that I think is really interesting, that I really think is something that a lot of people who work in healthcare don't understand how controversial it can be. And I think as they are beginning to politicize more areas of healthcare, something that I think a lot of people really should listen to, those of us who work in reproductive rights, about what is coming down the pike if we don't get some of these extremists in our government under control and in our society under control, is a tweet by the ACLU, who they took an image of a tweet from Dr. Fauci saying he doesn't understand why people are so upset about health. I don't know, why are people coming after healthcare providers? We just care about health. And the ACLU's response is, abortion providers have entered the chat. And it's true, is I think, in a lot of cases, when it comes to working in healthcare, like I've never worked in a hospital, but again, aforementioned my mom, I know from hearing her talk about, her stories working.
We share that. Both our moms were nurses.
Yes. Our moms would have liked each other if they had met. So
I'm certain of it. Yes. But yeah, one of the things that has happened recently, unfortunately, also occurred in your home state there, which reminds me of a time from my past, because, the 70s would have been when, I was growing up in high school, my early adulthood. So I remember those things going on, and I lived in a southern state. So I knew about those things and the opposing viewpoints. But recently, and also in the state of Tennessee here, of course, this is where Martin Luther King was assassinated. And during that period, there was a lot of that going on. The atmosphere was very politically charged. This atmosphere that we're currently in, this political climate, has a lot of similarities to those times, being so that something horrific happened in your state not long ago. Could you tell us a little bit about that and how it made you feel?
I previously worked for a member of the Minnesota House of Representatives. I'm from the southern suburbs. So the specific incident, the murder, the former speaker, Melissa Hortman, occurred on the northern suburbs. So I'm pretty far from where it actually happened. So in terms of what like immediate impact it did not have, the suburb that I live in was not on a lockdown. We did not have police, running through our neighborhood looking for the murderer. But my state senator and my state representative were actually on a list that I've seen in the media that supposedly is his list of local legislators.
Mm.
Also, several people of whom used to be in leadership positions at our local Planned Parenthood affiliate were also on that list. So I actually knew quite a few people from what I could see on that list. I, have never been in a position high enough where he would even be able to know that I existed. I didn't need to worry about that. But I think it just simply reinforces just how dangerous the environment is for us who work in reproductive health care. And I think kind of with what I was kind of talking about before is when we start to look at other areas of healthcare. So when we look at who is running the Department of Health and Human Services and their feelings about vaccinations, I think we are going to start to see more people do scarier and scarier things with even primary care doctors who provide vaccines or recommend vaccines. I think more and more people who are, accepting of the transgender community, even if not participating in gender therapy or gender confirmation therapy. It's not going to stop there. I don't know where it's going to go from there next, but I mean, they have bombed abortion clinics. They have shot abortion doctors before. And when we look at it, it's the same rhetoric. It's you're harming children. It's Trump's, teachers are turning children trans.
Trans, yes.
Yeah.
That's just the craziest thing to me, that there are really people that believe that. And you're right. This is a sad time and place that we're in where basic healthcare decisions, rights that should be very personal between individuals and their doctors are now being politicized. I can't imagine being a doctor having trained to save lives, to have to navigate this, to be able to continue your work, because it's not like just a 4-year degree.
No.
And depending on their specialty in their area,
Mhm.
they spend a lot of time and money going to school to get out and to be met with this while you're practicing, to have to think about the legality, not because of what truly is legal, but because of something that has been politicized.
Well, and that is a really important thing that I think a lot of people don't understand is even people who maybe are thinking, oh, okay, abortion's illegal now, I just won't get one. Or, I can fly to another state. And, that is something that we see a lot of in Minnesota is we have some of the most liberal abortion laws in the country. And also we have a very large airport. So we're Delta's second largest hub. So you pretty much can get anywhere in the country from MSP. So we have a lot of people who fly in. What I think, or what I kind of want to talk about, or the biggest point is what we are flying out. And one of the things is the majority of our doctors who provide abortion care also provide it in the city of Duluth, which is in northern Minnesota. We also used to, not we, Planned Parenthood, but I say we, the reproductive rights movement, used to send doctors to Fargo, to Red River Women's Clinic. Some of our doctors at Planned Parenthood also work there. And also Planned Parenthood, we used to send one of our doctors twice a week, every week, to Sioux Falls to do abortion. And kind of the reason why I'm bringing that up is in a lot of these communities, they're also lacking prenatal care. Now, we just with our setup and with our funding are not set up in order to do that. But patients who are traveling hours to go to their abortion provider, if they were to continue their pregnancy, they also would be traveling hours in order to get to their prenatal provider. And, one of the other things is exactly when you talk about the amount of work that it takes to becoming just a doctor, and then it takes to going through residency and fellowship, and then now that you can practice, you're not just like in the clear where you can practice and do what you want. You are regulated by the medical board of the state that you're licensed in. And that's another one of the things that a lot of these states have been doing that have banned abortion, is they still have oversight over your license in your state. So if you're licensed in multiple states and you're providing abortion over here in Minnesota, but then you want to go practice gynecology and obstetrics over in South Dakota, the state of South Dakota legally can't put you in jail right now, at least, for providing abortions in Minnesota, because it's a matter in Minnesota. But they absolutely have overview over your license. And that's another one of the things that a lot of these states have started. There's questions about whether or not they're actually going to do it, but are starting to look into going after doctors' licenses, doctors' insurance, and things like that in their states. So I just wanted to highlight that when you brought that up about the work that it takes to go into being a doctor, like, you are going to do what you need to do to defend your license, because that's your livelihood. You're right. It isn't just a 4-year degree. That it's to the point where there are doctors who are leaving states with abortion bans, even if they don't provide abortions on an elective level, because they are worried about what happens at any period of time that they are treating a patient in any other state. Is the medical board in their state going to use that potentially against them? And I think that's kind of just another thing that I think is usually left out of the conversation.
I am glad that you kind of explained that, because I do think that it is important. And as we kind of start to wrap up, I know you and I could talk all day, so much that I want to do, and hopefully we can do this again.
Of course.
But one of the things that I want you to tell people, because you are engaged online and you are politically savvy, engaged, I would like you to tell people about something that you're doing to kind of help keep people informed and get them civically engaged. Tell us a little bit about some of that work that you're doing.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate that. So I'm on Spoutable along with Dee. So you can actually catch Dee and I both in the laundromat on Tuesday evenings at 8:30 Central Time. I am running what I'm calling my Summertime Solution series. So I'm going through the first 3 sessions of the series, have been going through the process of building a campaign. So we started with messaging. Last week we talked about micro-targeting. And then tonight we are going to talk about building an actual campaign plan. And then over the summer, we are going to break down the issues. And I think kind of my goal for this overall is, right now there's lots of conversation. We should focus on this issue, or we should focus on that issue would win us the election. And it really is how we talk about the issues to everybody. And it's analyzing, like, what vulnerabilities we have on this issue, what advantages we have on this issue, and how to talk to everybody about how, pick whatever issue you want, whether it is forgiving student debt, whether it's universal health care, whether it is, expanding access to universal pre-K, or any of those issues, is how to really talk about it and get out of the bubble of, it sounds good to me and it sounds good to all the people around me, so this issue is going to win us the next election. When we know that doesn't always happen. And I think that's something where a lot of times people can get a little not understanding why we lost an election, why this issue didn't win us an election, why if we only do this or if we only do that. And it really is, you need to build an entire strategy to build that coalition, to carry those issues, to get those issues across the finish line, and most importantly, to get legislation passed in order to do that.
Absolutely. And I am so appreciative of the work that you're doing there, helping to inform and educate people. And I am glad to be a part of that with you. You're very knowledgeable in that. I think it's great because we have elections going on all the time. But of course, next year, we're going to have the midterms. It's going to be very important. So thank you for that work. I think we'll wrap up. And I just want to ask you for some closing thoughts, words of wisdom that you would like to share with the Advocacy Arena audience.
Well, I would say, I think the biggest words of wisdom that I have is, I think it's paramount to get involved. And I think to understand that being involved is more than just tweeting. It's more than just being on social media. I think there is the phrase, be the change that you want to see. what is really important is to look for the other change makers out there in society, to go out and to meet them, and to go out and to start helping them and networking with them. That would kind of be my closing thought.
Thank you so much for that, JTK. And thank you for carving out a little time for us here today in Advocacy Arena. Your voice is always valued, so I am looking forward to it. And we're going to wrap it up, but I'll see you in the pod. And I want to thank you again for the work that you do and the advocacy you're always maintaining and working on, so.
Thank you. And thank you to you, Dee.
Thank you for listening to Connections and Conversations. This is one of many wonderful interviews that we bring to you to help connect you to a larger community of advocates and change makers across the country. You'll get a glimpse into the various ways people are making an impact in their communities. My hope is that it will inspire you to get engaged in some small way as well. We can't all do everything, but at this moment in history, we can all do something. What are you doing? One of the things you can do is to continue to listen, subscribe, and share this Advocacy Arena podcast. You can also join and support the growing grassroots Advocacy Arena community in other ways. Join our weekly live chats hosted on Spoutable every Monday at 12 p.m. Eastern. Subscribe to our Substack to get great articles on important topics and exclusive access to extended interview conversations. And don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel as well. We've got some exciting programming lined up. And keep listening to our regular podcast episodes wherever you get your podcasts. And of course, subscribe and give us that all-important 5-star review.